January 8th meeting of the Newton Public School Committee. We will start with public comment period. We have 3 remote commenters and 6 commenters in the room. The public comment period is reserved for members of the public to address the school committee and for committee members to hear from you. We will not respond in real time, but know that we listen to and seriously consider your comments. You can always reach us at our emails or phone numbers that are posted on the website. I ask that everyone in the room please respond from any sort of applause or disruption. Remote speakers, please ensure that your Zoom name matches the name you used to request to speak so we can identify you. And for folks in the room, I will call your names from the posted sign-up sheet. When you're called upon, you have 3 minutes to share your concerns. Please state your name and address. And Emily Prenner will be keeping time and give you a 30-second verbal warning before your time expires. So with that, why don't we start with our 3 remote speakers. We have Robin Boger, and then followed by Dan Evans and Donna Th.
Good evening. Am I on now?
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. My name is Robin Boger, and I live at 200 Church Street, Greer, in Newton Corner. I'm president of the Newton Corner Neighborhood Association, which is an organization of 200 plus people living here or working in Newton Corner who have come together to advocate for our village. As you know, Newton Corner has no village center. It was replaced by a highway rotary in the 1960s. So we have no control over the thousands of cars that go through our neighborhood every day, or the lack of retail that can service the neighborhood. What brings us together are our schools, and we are very proud of our local schools and the education they provide for our children. As president of the organization, I try to stay on top of what our members are concerned with, and they speak freely to me about their ideas and their needs. I would like to share some of the feedback I've received on this issue with you tonight. Parents today face multiple challenges in keeping their children safe. Aside from the loss of learning during COVID, they're very concerned about teen mental health issues. They believe that the levels of current staffing are not adequate to meet their children's needs. They're terrified when they hear of children who have possible self-harm issues not being able to get the counseling that they need because of the lack of adults in the school at the time. They're extremely unhappy with the lack of aides in the classrooms and the consequences of what this means when a teacher becomes ill or the aide is sick. Teachers can no longer teach. They have to deal with behavioral issues, and this troubles the residents here very much. Parents have stopped me in Farlow Park and commented on how unhappy they are because a favorite teacher has left the school to work for more money and less stress in a community closer to their home. To summarize what members are feeling about this issue, one woman stopped me and said, you know, teachers are like partners in raising my children. My children spend 30 hours a week with this partner, and it makes me very unhappy when I see them being mistreated. Those are some of the statements made by members of the association. As for myself, the teachers being treated, one might say even abused, as they are now in this negotiation. So I'd like to conclude by saying the crisis is not in the future. The feeling here in Newton Corner is that the crisis is happening now and needs to be resolved now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Our next remote speaker is Dan Evans.
Hi, Dan Evans, 24 Manor Street. Well said, Robin, thanks. The last school committee meeting, I asked some questions regarding money spent on legal services in regards to negotiations. And while I appreciate the response from the committee, the information was vague. In FY24, I was told the legal services were budgeted for $80,000 and adjusted to $200,000. FY24 to date spent $126,781.38. You did note this includes labor and school law matters from outside legal counsel, not just negotiations, and that expenses are not currently segregated. Understood. And that's a heck of a jump from FY23 $61,000 spend on legal services. Since you can't provide specifics, one can assume the majority has been spent on negotiations. Sounds like a pool leak to me. NPS teachers and paraprofessionals continue to do more than they should without a contract. Why? Because they care. NPS schools should be fully funded, and Mayor Fuller, school committee, you have the power to make this fair. PS, a fair contract is wanted. PPS, a fair contract is needed. PPPPPPS, a fair contract is deserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public commenter is Donna Th.
Hi, Donna Th. I live at 138 Warwick Road. I'm a second grade teacher at Mason Rice, and I've been teaching in Newton for 21 years. I'd like to address parents with my comments. The word negotiation means discussion aimed at reaching an agreement. Please be aware that the mayor's school committee is not negotiating. They are at war with us, and they're using you to wage this war. You see, here in Newton, it's not those of us who work for Newton who are listened to. It is parents who drive the change that occurs. Know that the mayor's school committee has chosen to send out emails that are purposely inflammatory because they don't want you, the parents, to advocate for us, your teachers and staff. They go to PTO meetings that are not straightforward. Just because the school committee starts each meeting by emphatically stating that they are bargaining with us in good faith does not make it true. They say we are already paid. If that was true, we could hire people to work in our schools. We used to have a lineup of well-qualified people who wanted to come and work. Now we have lots of openings. If they win, we all lose. I love my job, but I don't feel the least bit respected or valued by the mayor's school committee. And I know that there are amazing people on the school committee, so I don't understand why this is happening. My daughter moved from teaching in Newton to teaching in Belmont and received a $6,000 increase. Newton is losing excellent teachers. If they win, we all lose. Instead of starting their meeting with an inaccurate comment that they are bargaining with us in good faith, they should instead be honest and tell you that their mayor has underfunded your school system each and every year of her tenure. And until they put this at her feet and hold her accountable, your child's school system will pay the price. Call the mayor and demand she release the funds she is sitting on. If she won't stand up for us, you must.
Thank you. We will move to public comment from inside the room. First is Britney Briley, followed by Rachel Bennett.
Hello, everyone. My name is Britney Briley, and I live at 35 Andrew Street in Bellingham, Mass. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story tonight. I've taught 8th grade math at Day Middle School for the last 9 years. This is the 4th district I've taught in and the first one that finally felt like home. I love my colleagues, I love my administration, and most of all, I love the students I teach. I commute over an hour every day because that's as close as my family can afford to live to Newton, because I love my job so much. I leave before my own children wake up and work for hours after they go to bed because I'm dedicated to educating the students of Newton. I can honestly say that my job does not cause me stress. I know that's not true for all educators, but it is for me. What does cause me stress, though, and lots of it, is the financial situation my family is in due to my career choice. Unlike a lot of my colleagues in Newton, I'm the main source of income for my family. My husband makes about 2/3 of my salary. 90% of his paycheck every week pays for our children to go to daycare so we can work. The other 10% pays for his car payment. That means that my salary pays for all of our other expenses, our mortgage, my car payment, our car insurance, both sets of student loans. Both of us were first-generation college students from low-income households whose parents were not able to contribute anything to our college education. Heat, electricity, water, groceries, toiletries, diapers for our toddler, clothes, gas for the 150 miles a day we collectively commute. I take home a little more than $1,000 a week. Obviously, that's not enough to pay for all of these things, so sadly, we are drowning. Our mortgage is a month behind. My car hasn't been paid in 3 months. We have tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. I stress every day about having to declare bankruptcy or my car being repossessed. Sorry. I share this not out of sympathy, but to raise awareness about my situation, because I am not the only teacher in Newton who's struggling like this. And I'm a teacher. I cannot even begin to imagine how our Unit C members, many of whom earn half of my salary, are surviving. The school committee stresses how well-paid Newton teachers are. I'm not disagreeing that teachers were well compensated. We have some of the higher salaries in Massachusetts. I won't argue with that. But the claim that we don't need a COLA that's equivalent to that of other districts who we are paid more than is false. The last 8 years of my life I've been working in this salary. My expenses are dependent on what I'm paid working in this district. If the cost of living goes up by a certain percent, so should my salary. COLA increases should be non-negotiable. Social Security determined that COLAs for current rates of inflation in 22 and 23 were 5.9 and 8.7% respectively. Teachers in Newton received a 2.5% COLA for 22, and since our contract was not settled before it expired, a 1% COLA for calendar year 23. Social Security is implementing a 3.2% COLA for 2024, yet as of the December 4th negotiation, the school committee was only offering 2% for the first year of our contract. This is not adequate. The school committee claims that COLAs don't need to be as high as in other professions because teachers also receive step increases or longevity pay. I'm one step away from the top step in my degree lane. That means after next year, I will only be able to receive my COLA raise. I won't be eligible for longevity for more than 5 years. And even then, it's $750 a year, which is about $20 a paycheck after taxes for the next 6 years. In a month, that will help pay for a week's worth of gas to commute to and from Newton. I'm urging the school committee and the mayor to think of me and other educators in my same situation when they are bargaining for our children.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rachel Bennett, followed by Matthew Mazer. And before you speak, Ms. Bennett, I just want to recognize that Dr. Nolan will have to step out at about 7 p.m. to address the Finance Committee of the City Council. So when she's stepping out of the room, that's the reason why. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Rachel Bennett. I live at 99 Stanford in Auburndale. I'm a parent of a 2nd grader at Boureau and a 5th grader at Cabot. I'm here to try to show you that our educators and our students are worthy of a school system that is fully funded and worthy of a quality and fair contract. Let me share why I believe in Newton Public Schools. My 5th grader is visually impaired with other disabilities. I've navigated a school system in another state that tried to show me that my son was unteachable and not worthy of being on an academic track. It's the challenge of a lifetime to raise a child with disabilities in a society that actively chooses not to be fully accessible or inclusive. So at every turn, in every interaction, I have to prove that my son is worthy and enough. We are here in Newton because this district shows the world that all children can learn. My son's team at Cabot is collaborative, creative, and all around incredible. He is on his own path as a reader, writer, and problem solver. He has a strong sense of belonging in the Cabot community. Because of his school team, I'm able to be his mom first and foremost. And if any of you are raising kids with disabilities, you know how powerful that statement is. Both of my kids are thriving because of the high-quality educators they get to work with every day. But I'm really worried. I'm worried because the chronic underfunding of our schools from the mayor's office and the actions of the school committee this past year that have undermined our teachers will negatively impact our student outcomes. It will compromise Newton's ability to provide an accessible education to my son and so many other students. I'm asking you to believe that my son and that our students are worthy. We count on expert and skilled services and staffing, all that will directly impact our kids' quality of life. It's about his quality of life. And I'm asking you to believe in and value the worth of our educators and staff. Clearly staying the course with these negotiations is not working. Our educators are worthy of fair, honest, face-to-face conversations during these negotiations. They are worthy of being truly listened to. They are worthy of having respectful and productive dialogue. They are fighting for the future of our schools and what our kids need. As a parent, and after speaking with many parents in this community, we ask, what do you stand for if it's not for our students and teachers? Please take positive and productive steps forward. Give teachers a fair and quality contract. Stop underfunding our school system and invest in and actively support the growth of our schools and keep Newton the gold standard for what accessible and rigorous education looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Matthew Mazer, followed by Kim Bordeaux.
Good evening. I'm Matthew Mazer, 24 Maynard Street. So my twins entered the public school system at NECP in September of 2019. That first day, I was surprised to learn that teachers and staff were having issues with their contract negotiations. Again, that was in 2019, and here we are again. 2024, and now I'm angry. My twins attend Horace Mann and are in second grade. I want my children's teachers compensated for their time and effort, just like I did in 2019, just like I will again in 3 more years. I want to feel proud of our school district, not embarrassed that our mayor, school committee, and administrators can't agree on how to support our educators and support staff. I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said. Clearly, if the compelling stories and speeches over the last few months from Newton teachers and fellow Newtonians aren't enough to change mine and do right by our children and educators and staff, I have little faith that I can effect change this evening. If the loss of confidence from over 1,600 Newton educators isn't enough to make you, Mayor Fuller, understand and fix the dire situation that we find ourselves in, I don't know what else will. So I'll just add that you can add me to those who have lost confidence. I already had back in 2019. Mayor Fuller, you lost my vote. I know you and the school committee can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kim Bordeaux, followed by Ari Zarin.
Good evening. My name is Kim Bordeaux, and I live at 18 Stoneleigh Road, West Newton. Like many others, my family moved to Newton in 2021 for the schools. We have 3 children, including a child with a complicated learning profile, so we felt like we won the lottery when we managed to buy a cozy little condo by the skin of our teeth. Since moving here, I've been an active member of the Horace Mann PTO, served as a member of the Newton CPAC board, and have even volunteered as a Girl Scout leader for a group of second grade brownies. As we settled into our new community, my husband and I were excited to see how an excellent school system with abundant resources ran and recovered from the unprecedented strains of a global pandemic. Unfortunately, in the 2 years that we've lived in Newton, there has not been a single day that our schools have operated with a fully funded budget. At a time where our students and educators need support more than ever, Newton Public Schools has made devastating cuts to vital staff positions and important school programs. While working with the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, I gained a deep understanding for how these cuts put our most vulnerable learners at immediate risk and posed a costly trickle-down effect for the academic, social, and emotional needs of all NPS students. During my past 2 years as a Newton resident, I have signed petitions, attended meetings, and fought to preserve staff positions. I visited the mayor's office, I have voted, and protested for improvements to my children's elementary school building, a building where reading intervention takes place in noisy hallways, and the best classrooms are in trailers. Tonight, I stand with our educators to support their fight for a fair contract. I support the NTA's priorities which are clearly in the best interest of our children and those of Newton taxpayers whose home values directly benefit from the strength of our schools. Our experience at Horace Mann has showed me that dedicated staff members and talented educators make schools great, not the buildings that hold their classrooms. NTA members, I can only imagine how exhausting and disillusioning these negotiations have been. You are truly the heart of our schools, and I want to assure you that Newton residents are paying attention.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you for your talents and the love that you pour into our children every day. Mayor Fuller and school committee members, Newton's standing as a strong school system is at risk. Make the investment, value our educators, and give our children the resources that they deserve. Please yield to the NTA's proposal so we can all move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ari Zarin, followed by Ryan Normandin.
Hello, members of the school committee, Mayor Fuller. My name is Ari Zarin. I live at 301 Woodcliff Road in Newton, Massachusetts, obviously. I graduated from Newton South High School last year. I'm coming back from my first semester at McAllister College in Minnesota. I'm a successful college student. I have a 4.0 GPA this semester, and I want to thank all of my Newton Public Schools educators for getting me to the place that I am today. I went to preschool in this very building, and then I went to Countryside Elementary School, Brown Middle School, and then Newton South High School. All along the way, I have had the privilege to have some amazing educators, many of whom are in the room today. I'm deeply frustrated with how the city has engaged in bargaining with the Newton Teachers Association. They deserve more. I'm here as a representative of young people in Newton who don't often come to these public comments. When I'm looking at my future prospects, I don't think Newton is a place I would come back to. That's because of the declining quality of these schools. The whole benefit of being in Newton, from my perspective as somebody who one day wants to raise a family, is amazing public education, which I believe is a cornerstone of our country. Not having that opportunity in my hometown is devastating, and I don't think that I will be able to share the same experiences that I've had with my kids here in this city. I'd have to move somewhere else. Now I want to speak to you directly, Mayor Fuller. I held a lawn sign for you on Election Day in 2021. I did that because I believed that you would be a better candidate than your opponent for the Newton Public Schools. I asked my parents to vote for you. I asked my friends to vote for you. I couldn't vote then, I was too young, because I believed that you were a mayor who was willing to work with people and make the right decisions for our city's future. I don't believe that anymore. You haven't shown it to us in this contract negotiation. You spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this bargaining process when these teachers' demands are small. They should be asking for more. I come from a background of privilege, and I'm aware of that, as do many of my classmates in the Newton Public Schools and many of the residents in this city. The average home, when I look at the home prices on the realtors in Newton Center, they're $4.5 million, $6 million homes.
30 seconds.
The people of this city should respect those people who have given them such a great education and a great city. That includes their elected officials. I don't know what would convince you to support the Newton Public Teachers Association. I don't know if you can't listen to the arguments of the teachers, hear their emotional and important words. I don't know what's going to convince you. But members of the school committee and Mayor Fuller, don't
Thank you.
make the destruction of
Your
Newton
time is
Public
up.
Schools your legacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker this evening is Ryan Normandin.
Ryan Normandin, 4 Air Road, Brighton. There have now been months of public comments, months of people coming up here and telling you how bad things are. Through tears, as we heard tonight, people have shared stories of being unable to afford food, being bankrupted by medical expenses, even donating blood plasma to make ends meet. And during all of this time, nothing has really changed. And I can't help but to wonder whether that's because you're not really listening to us. In private conversations, current and former members of this school committee have expressed the belief that the folks coming up here and literally sobbing in public to you are disgruntled employees. Most NPS employees, the silent majority, the story goes, are happy. The Newton Public Schools have problems, lots of problems. When you all ran for election, you talked about what you believe those problems to be and how you plan to solve them. Despite most of you having little to no understanding of what it is actually like to work in a school, you promised that you were the ones to make them better, and for that you were elected to public office. Yet, when my colleagues and students and parents come in here and do the exact same thing you did, identify problems and suggest solutions, I worry that you label us as rabble-rousers and dismiss our input. Even worse, I worry that the school committee begins to think of educators as a problem to be solved, rather than soliciting our input as the solution to so many of your problems. We have spent thousands of hours, more than you have, within the Newton Public Schools. We know intimately the contours of the problems that you understand only theoretically. Negotiations highlight the disconnect caused by not truly listening. Every week you listen to your negotiations team give you updates, and every week you're without questions. Rajiv, in a conversation that you had with an educator, you said you do ask questions during executive session. That's not enough. You all need to ask questions publicly. Do you not wonder why their narrative of negotiations is so different from ours? Are you not curious? Do you truly think so little of your teachers? Emily, during the leadership caucus, you turned around to where I was sitting and said that you believed you have a good relationship with educators. You do not. None of you do, because none of you have earnestly listened to us. On Ping and Chris, I worked with both of you on the district's calendar committee. You struck me as reasonable people, and I don't imagine that as I volunteered to help the district, I came off as a disgruntled employee who should be ignored. Why is my input helpful in that room, but anathema in this one? Chris, you've said your settling negotiations is your top priority. Productivity and outcomes are how we should measure our success, you say. Yet you chose to keep the same negotiations team that's worked without results for the last 18 months. A team including someone who's not even a member of the school committee and someone else who has been in person to one meeting since September because he essentially lives outside the country. A team that has sought to restrict sick leave, increase health insurance costs, replace our prep time with duties, and the right to discriminate against non-resident children of staff enrolled in NPS if they have disabilities. How do you expect to get results like this? It seems like everyone in this city is aware of the solution except for you. Educators, families, students have said Mayor Fuller needs to increase the allocation to NPS. The superintendent that you hired has said the allocation needs to increase to 5%, not 3.5%. It's only the school committee that wrings their hands helplessly every week. Where's the leadership in this district? Why will nobody on this side of the table stand up and tell Mayor Fuller that funding the schools adequately is part of her job and she needs to do that? Listen to us. We're not crazy. Chris, you boasted about how often you vote alone on issues, but on the most important ones, you're going along with everyone else. Listen to us, listen to our superintendent, join everyone else in the city who knows the mayor needs to provide the funds to settle this contract and stop creating artificial budget crises every year. Thank you.
Thank you. That will close our public comment period. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. There's 3 items on the agenda for tonight. We have the meeting minutes from December 18th. I'll give a moment for folks to clear out of the room if they so choose. There are 3 items on the consent agenda for tonight. There's the December 18th meeting minutes, policy JL in student safety and food deliveries, and out-of-state international field trips. Is there any item that a member would like to remove from the consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing no one moving to remove an item, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as it stands.
I motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Moved by Rajiv. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Tamika. And we will do a roll call vote to approve the consent agenda. Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes. Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6? Not present. Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 8?
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
That passes 8-0 and 1 absent. The superintendent's report is next up on the agenda, but as I said, Dr. Nolan had to step out to speak with the Finance Committee with our partners in City Council. So we will move on and we will get the superintendent's report when she returns. The next item on the agenda is negotiations update. So we had our scheduled mediation session this afternoon. We literally just stepped out of it as we came in here, so we don't have any formal prepared remarks. I can share that we did, at the request of NTA leadership, sit down face-to-face in the same room, which is not how the mediation has typically been conducted. There were some proposals presented. There will be response in short order, and we have our next session scheduled for the 19th, the 19th and the 25th. So 2 more dates on the calendar over the next couple weeks. Is there any questions anyone has? I know there's not a lot of information to share at this point in time, given the timing, but Tamika or myself will be happy to answer any questions if you have them. Okay. Next item on the agenda is public presentation on school choice. Are you stepping up for that, Liam?
Yes.
Okay, great.
No problem. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, new school committee members. Nice to meet you here. Liam Hurley, Assistant Superintendent. I'm actually going to be joined shortly, actually, with some DESE colleagues of mine, Rob O'Donnell and Cheryl, I'm not sure how to pronounce, I think it's Loisel, that are going to join in, hopefully online for us. We did receive a number of questions, which was great, school committee. I'm happy to go through those questions, read the question, answer those, and then go right into this presentation. So if that's okay with the committee, I was just going to kind of get right into these questions. And Rob and Cheryl, you're there. I think I'm seeing you.
Yeah, we're here.
Great, Rob and Cheryl, do you guys mind just quickly introducing yourselves? Because you guys are going to be great partners for me in this presentation.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. So Rob O'Donnell, I'm the Director of School Finance at DESE. We work on the school choice program, among other things. I'll let Cheryl introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Loisel. I work on the school choice program.
Okay, thank you both. And again, thanks for being there. At the end of my presentations, we're going to open this up, certainly more questions, and they're going to be super helpful. So some of the questions we received, I'm going to go through these quickly, if you don't mind, from the school committee, and answer them, and then go through this presentation. So first question was, what is the difference between full participation and limited participation? I'm not sure I fully understood the question, but districts can either participate in school choice or opt out. Districts may limit participation by accepting a certain number of students, certain grades, or even by school. What is the impact of participating on existing policies and allowing children of employees to enroll in NPS? If school choice was adopted by the school committee, we would expect our staff to apply for school choice, which also allows for students to graduate from Newton Public Schools regardless of their employment status. If a child of an employee does not gain acceptance through school choice, we would still expect these children to get into Newton Public Schools, kind of the same process we have now. It's a space available, kind of selection process. We certainly cannot give those children preference, any of the staff children preference through the school choice process, but there would be kind of a secondary avenue that these students would get into Newton. What happens when specialized programming enrollment is full? If districts are on the hook for out-of-district placements and the program is designed to fill empty seats. So I think in one of the slides I'll talk a little bit more about this, and Rob, I may have you folks talk a little bit about this because it's a little bit nuanced, but for any school choice students who require out-of-district placement, so if there's a determination made that they need to be placed out of district, the receiving district, which in our case would be Newton, would be the receiving, they'd be the sending district would be where they'd be coming from, pays the tuition and is reimbursed the full cost by the sending district after filling out a special education incremental form. The sending district then can claim circuit breaker reimbursement. So essentially we would be paying, but we would be reimbursed that full amount. Rob and Cheryl, did I get that one right? That one's an important, I think, concept. If I'm off on that, please let me know.
Yeah, you got that right, Liam.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Applications cannot include discipline data and detailed IEP information. What can applications can include? Name, date of birth, address, phone number, email address, current grade, and grade applying for admission. Who will process applications? Who will serve as data and certification admin? Who will manage the one-year wait list? And what will the process be for moving students off the wait list mid-year? So certainly Katie Hogue is involved with a lot of our data enrollment in terms of submitting data to the state. So she would be involved with kind of conducting data certification, as she does now with our current students. Some of this will need to be determined, I think, if the committee decides to make this vote. Anna has talked about basically having a spring application window and a fall matriculation as students are added midway through the year. There is another question we'll talk about in a moment about if students, is there a wait list or is there a period of time and you could put in a cutoff date. Is there any hidden admin costs, new or existing, in participating? So I think it's a great question. I think from my perspective, this is really a question of kind of administrative time and management. There will be additional time, involved with kind of administering this. So some of the assignment of these duties will need to be determined. We don't foresee adding additional staff or needing additional staff from Newton Public Schools to administer this, but it is certainly a time commitment that we would need to commit to. And I think we've developed, certainly kind of processes and procedures that hopefully we're pretty efficient. Do any current Newton students participate in school choice in other communities, i.e. are we paying for our own students to go elsewhere? If so, what reasons do families cite for participating? Is it less or more likely or net zero that families will continue this practice if we become school choice participants? So it's important to note so that the school choice funding comes actually out of the Chapter 70 funding. So it doesn't come out of our operating budget or other districts' operating budgets. We currently have 21 students that do attend other technically school choice, but believe it or not, all of those are in the virtual academies. There's one called TECA, and there's one called the Greater Commonwealth Virtual District. So all 21 of our students that go out of Newton through the school choice program go to the virtual. We have not done polling on that, but certainly this must be the reason these families are choosing for a virtual situation for their students to do that. So a couple more here, then get into this presentation. These were actually from a slide that was I provided a lot of materials here. This was actually in a slide, I think it was slide 17 in the DESE webinar. They had given a webinar, and the question was, what should a district do when a school choice student needs to be placed in an out-of-district placement? So I kind of answered kind of the cost there. The sending district must be invited to the IEP meeting where the placement decision is made if they want to offer a different option for the family in the home district. So there is a process involved. I talked a bit about that cost, basically, that the receiving district, us in that case, if school choice was accepted, does pay for it, but we're fully reimbursed for that cost. What happens if you accept a school choice student and your specialized programming is full? I think it's a great one. I don't know if I have the full answer on this. I think some of it's going to depend on a few situations here, but the receiving district, in our case, us, would need to find a way to accommodate the student in the best way we can. We're lucky in Newton, we've got robust programming, so the goal would be certainly to accommodate that. Opening up a new classroom is a big cost for us, so that's going to be would be a question that we would need to grapple with and come to you folks with. Last question before the presentation. If you have unfilled school choice slots, do you need to accept students all year? Rob, again, thank you for that one. He said, no, the district can establish a policy to only enroll students up to a certain date. So I think that's a detail that we'd need to work out, but if you wanted to enroll students up to a certain date, we could set that date and accept students till then. So just moving quickly just into this presentation, I think that was just kind of the protocol I wanted to go through. Quickly, just want to go through state law, program administration, which again, a lot of these questions kind of answered, rights and responsibilities of accepted students, projected fiscal impact, and next steps. So I don't know if I won't read all of these slides. This is certainly a law under the MGL, Chapter 76, Section 12B, the Inter-School District School Choice Program. It allows families to enroll their children in schools in communities other than the city or town in which they reside. All Massachusetts school districts are required to accept the inter-school district unless they vote to opt out. Historically, Newton has always opted out. I'm not aware of a time in the distant past that we've ever opted in. I don't think that's the case, so we've always opted out. So this is new for us if this was something we'd be thinking about. Again, talking about an annual basis, and again, annually we've opted out for this program. Program administration, just talking about some else. We're responsible for communicating this to prospective. If we're accepting school choice, we need to communicate this out to the world. We put something kind of on our website. There may be some other kind of advertising. We need to determine if a limited number of seats are available to, or if a number of limited seats are available to meet the available seats. We basically need a random, kind of lottery to accept these students, and certainly, we'll talk a little bit about discrimination and not having any form of discrimination in this process. Receiving districts must notify DESE of the enrolled students and the sending district. School choice tuition, this has just been set at $5,000 per student, so that's the amount that we'd receive per student. For a student with an IEP plan, if they're coming in with an IEP plan, there would be a special education increment that is added to the $5,000 that the district would get. School choice students required out-of-district placement, I think I've talked about this already, become the financial responsibility of the receiving district, but the receiving district, we receive that full reimbursement from the sending district. Obviously, a critical component of this, no school committee shall discriminate on the basis of race, color, religious creed, national origin, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, and so on. So certainly that's a key component to school choice. Rights and responsibilities of accepted students. Once enrolled, it is important to understand that a student has a right to continue attendance through graduation. So once they're in, they're allowed to stay in. They can opt to come out if they'd like to, but if they'd like to stay in, they are in. So you basically are with that student. They have the same rights as our, and to the education and co-curricular program as our current students. And we are actually not required, the receiving district is not required to provide transportation. So a yellow bus is not required to go to other of these outside communities. They have to provide transportation themselves. If a transportation is required for an IEP, the sending district must pay the full cost. We might arrange that, but the actual expense is coming from the sending district. This is just a very high level. I think what's missing in this is our possible expenses associated with school choice, and I think I'd want to kind of think a little bit more about that. I just wanted to give a very simple scenario, and this is again hypothetical. I don't know what the number with students, but if, for example, we accepted 200 students, DESE pays out on basically a 1/12 basis, and they actually do a calculation by FTE. So if a student was not enrolled until November, that student is like a 0.85 FTE calculation. So I'm taking just about 95% of that total kind of population, or bringing it down to about 190 students, and that's $5,000 per student, and that's $950,000 per year. That money we would need to open up a revolving account that's controlled by the school committee. The language is without further appropriation, so school committee, you could basically use that for anything that, any kind of general education use. I typically recommend something like teacher salaries, but it could really almost be anything that we'd want to use for that. But it again, it could be used as a direct expense for NPS. And this does not include any special education increment or any of that out-of-district placements that we talked about. So this is just a straight regular, kind of regular education dollar, funding that we receive. And I do think that there's potential certainly for some costs, and I think we could kind of think about that and kind of delve into that a little bit, because there's potentially some other costs that I think could come into this. So I've just outlined some next steps here, some dates. We've got a lot going on, certainly, and some of the interesting things coming up to us. Another discussion January 22nd, class size and enrollment report on February 5th. Dr. McKibben is coming in with his demographic report on February 26th. We've got a neighborhood school discussion March 4th. Public hearing, I think that's required on April 1st, and then we're looking to try to get a vote from the school committee on April 4th. So certainly a lot of time between now and then. Ask more questions. Rob and Cheryl are going to be, I think I might be forwarding off a number of questions if they're challenging for me to Rob and Cheryl. So I've put a lot of helpful links in this presentation, but also in the memo. So a lot of this is on DESE. You can really kind of go down the rabbit hole. I've also provided in there kind of a who's accepting school choice in Massachusetts. I think it was around 160 or so districts. Many of them are not right in our immediate area. Many Western Mass are a little further out, 495, many Cape Cod, but certainly it's very common. It's almost half of the public schools in Massachusetts, I think, are accepting school choice at this point. So with that, open that up to questions, and can direct this to Rob and Cheryl too as they come.
Okay, great. Thank you, Liam. Appreciate that. Questions? Rajiv, and then Tamika.
Liam, thank you for this, and thank you to our guests from DESE for joining. Appreciate you taking the time for that. I have 3 questions. I'll try and get through them very quickly and save time for others. Starting first, Liam, with, are there districts in Metro West that participate in school choice? So kind of within our group of what we consider peer districts, do any of them participate?
Yeah, I have to take a quick look at the list. Natick was participating, I think at least 2 years ago. I believe that Medfield, Millis were participating, so a number of kind of 495, kind of that 128 kind of specific. I don't believe there's too many right now participating in school choice, kind of our closer neighbors. But that list, I've got a list that I could pull up if you want, Rajiv, that lists every community, you know, out of 331 communities, what's in and what's out.
Thank you. The other one is regarding the out-of-district placement, because there's a little nuance in there, which is the dependency on circuit breaker. We've been hurt by circuit breaker before, in the sense of when, let's say, when refunds come in through circuit breaker and are paid out. So it does seem like we would be responsible for an out-of-district placement payment, and somewhat at the mercy, both us and the sending district, of circuit breaker before we were able to get any kind of reimbursement for it. Is that correct, in terms of the way at least it was described
Right.
here?
Yep, and it is a little confusing. Rob, I'm gonna try to kick that to you to
Yeah.
see if you can best answer that one.
Yeah, I can answer that one. So in terms of the school choice receiving district, so in this case, Newton, if you had a student that you were accepting through school choice that you placed in an out-of-district placement, you would pay the cost of that tuition for most of the school year until June, when you finalize your school choice claims for the year. We collect those in April, but it takes us a little while to process those. So we would basically accept what we call a special ed increment form from Newton, which you would use to classify the special education costs for all the school choice students that you've accepted. Most of those are going to be in-district programs. You may have a couple, a few, who are placed out in out-of-district placements. You would classify that cost on that form. We would process that claim and then reimburse you for the tuition cost for that student before the end of the fiscal year. So we would assess that cost to the sending district through the local aid distribution, and then basically transfer those funds to Newton to cover that cost, including the tuition cost, and if you were paying for the transportation, associated transportation costs for that student, you would be reimbursed for the transportation as well. In some cases, in cases of students who are placed out of district, in some instances, the sending district will actually pay for the transportation directly by coming to an agreement on that with the receiving district, and that's fine. Sometimes they can provide that more cost effectively directly themselves. So that would be a case-by-case basis. Now, if this was a student that you had for some period of time, say it wasn't the first year the student was placed in an out-of-district placement, we would use an estimated tuition cost for that student for the balance of the fiscal year. So you would be reimbursed, earlier on than at the end of the year for that student. And then we would true up the cost at the end of the year once we got the special ed increment claim from you at the end of the year. So there's a little bit of a difference, whether the student was a first-time placement or whether the student has been in Newton for some time, and we have a record of prior year tuition associated with that student. You would get reimbursement earlier in that case. So.
And Rob, what about the circuit breaker component that Rajiv was saying?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So Newton would not be eligible for circuit breakers. So you'd be reimbursed through the school choice process, right? The district that would be eligible for circuit breaker would be the sending district. So they would be eligible to claim that student in their next year's circuit breaker claim and be reimbursed for that prior year assessment. So that's how that would work. So this wouldn't fall on Newton's circuit breaker claim in any way. You'd be paid directly, in the same year that you incurred the cost, you would be reimbursed in that same year.
Emily, you have a...
Just a really quick follow-up question, just so my understanding is, so then the reimbursements would be flowing through a similar mechanism to Chapter 70, which means that it doesn't come directly to the district, it goes through the city and then hopefully flows into the district. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll go to the city. The city's obligated to reserve those funds in a school choice revolving account, as Liam explained, that would be available to the school committee without further appropriation.
Can I just clarify something? In the history of the city of Newton, we have never not passed that along to the Newton Public Schools, so.
Okay. Rajiv, you had another?
And you may not have the answer to this one, but I would love to get an understanding of how the financials work for school choice versus for Metco. Because they are similar programs with different goals, and certainly we are I think the largest Metco district. And I think there have been many benefits, not just to the students, but to the city from the Metco program. And I don't have those financials at my fingertips in terms of the payment per student, who covers the transportation and so on.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if we're talking about potentially filling empty spaces or evening out the student populations at different schools. I would like to understand how this would work versus Metco, especially financially. So it's something we can tackle later.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great.
Can I just interject? It's about $8,300 per pupil in Metco as of 2023.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
Sorry.
Rajiv, you're all set? Tamika?
Thanks, Chris. So I appreciate the pre-submitting our questions, and I think that leads to a lot of thoughtful discourse, but I guess my comments, because they're mostly comments, are really geared towards the next time we meet and the next time this is up for consideration. And so my comments are in that vein. The first is along the lines of what Rajiv raised, which was regarding our Metco students. Slightly different track. I'm wondering if next time we could really think about how Metco and school choice, were we to adopt it, would interact. Because both are space available dependent programs. And so if you're now splitting the space available seats between two programs that depend on it, I'm concerned that one would, I'm just concerned what the impact would be. And I think it would be important for us to understand what that would look like. So that's one. The other is around this idea of preference. You can only, my reading of the material you put together, Liam, with Rob and Cheryl, thank you very much for contributing, was that the only way that you could give preferential status to students was students of siblings. So you couldn't, per se, give preferential status to students in any other category, students who, any other category. And so really, I think understanding how this lottery and how to randomize our lottery would work, I think having that a little bit buttoned up in terms of what that might look like would be helpful for the school committee in deciding whether to implement school choice. And again, that's just kind of a broad-based artificial construct of how we might look to do it, understanding that the details would come down the line and be refined over time. I get that. And then I think the final thing I'd be looking for in our future follow-up conversation on this is to really speak to what are the challenges of districts that have adopted school choice. What are the things that they are working through and wrinkling through, and what would we have to face or figure out a plan to face were we to adopt school choice in Newton. So that's just my, big picture, how I'm looking at school choice. I think it's a great conversation for us to have. I think it's a timely one. And again, I appreciate Desi's assistance as we grapple with whether to adopt, and your work as well. I'm good.
Thank you, Tamika. Amy?
A question
And,
that I think is,
Anping?
sorry, somewhat related to the points that Tamika raised and not an answer now question. If I think about the supports that are in place for our Boston resident students beyond traditional classroom supports, such as academic liaisons, social workers, I'd be curious to hear if other school choice districts allocate similar resources to support out-of-district students. So that's one question for later. My other question is about funding and the recommendation that, the $5,000 per student funds go into a revolving account. If a student, I guess my logistical question is, how many students who apply for school choice receive their first choice or choices, and how reliable would we feel 200 seats will be filled year to year? Because it makes me a little anxious to think about propping up a salary with funds that come out of a revolving account.
Yeah.
And so I'd want to know, how reliable are those funds?
Sure. Okay. So on the one, yeah, I mean, so we do pay a number of staff off of revolving accounts, and I guess, that's the extent. I think what we don't know is what's the uptake. So if we put, and again, 200 is a hypothetical number. It could be 20, it could be, whatever that number would be. What is kind of the draw? How many people actually apply for to actually get into that? I think that's a good one. I don't have, and I could try to reach out. Rob, do you have any data in terms of students applying and getting their first choice? I'm not quite sure how to get that type of data.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Cheryl, I don't know if you have thoughts on that per se. I'm not sure. We don't really have data on how many students apply to multiple school choice districts and what the outcomes are in terms of where they ultimately are accepted. That's just not something that we track.
Okay, so that might be a tough one. I might be able to reach out to some business managers that are doing it. Again, what I don't know is if somebody applies, and they're going to be in the same boat. I don't know if they're seeing this student applied, and by the way, they've applied to these four districts as well. I don't know. I don't quite know. So Rob, if you don't have that info, I'm not quite sure how district.
Unfortunately, no, we don't.
I'm not quite sure how district is going to get that info. It may exist out there, but again, that may be info I might not be able to get. But let me find out.
Yeah, does every school that participates require a lottery because they have more applicants than spots?
So, Rob, my understanding this is, I don't know if it has to be a lottery, but it has to be kind of a, random, selection essentially. Rob, is and Cheryl, the process of how they do that, is it typically a lottery?
Yeah, Cheryl, do you want to speak to that one?
Sure. So if you anticipate that you'll have more students than you have seats, then you would need to run a lottery. Some districts don't need to run a lottery because they have more seats than they have students who would be applying.
Yeah, I don't know. We have across the board data. We did do some surveying of a selected group of districts to determine, how many run lotteries, how many don't. We haven't surveyed the entire field of school choice districts to determine how many are running a lottery in any given year versus not. We can maybe look at that small samples, maybe 40 districts, Cheryl, that we surveyed, and gauge from that how many were running lotteries. We could certainly look at that based on that sample, and that's something we're going to be doing again as well. We sampled surveyed a sample of districts with the intention of over time we would survey everybody, kind of as we move forward here, just to get some program administration data. So that's something we can take back.
Okay. And then just in terms of a number, I just wanted to comment, so we do have approximately, given year can fluctuate, about 120 to 140 students of staff that attend. Again, ideally, they would first be trying to apply through school choice, so, again, we can't give any preference, but ideally that would be, so right now we're not collecting any funding for those students to come to Newton. So that would be some revenue that we would get from, that process.
All set?
Thanks.
Okay. Anping?
Thank you. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Good. How are you,
Thanks
Anping?
for
Good
coming
to see
on
you.
board. Thanks for help. Now, first curious, by the way, our colleagues asked very good questions, and that's very thoughtful, and I think we need time to understand fully the financial picture of this program. How did you come to this number of 200? Just
It was hypothetical, Ping. That's what I said. I mean, again, I took a number that was enough money that would seem like there was some financial impetus for it. We have, certainly lost a number of students. Our enrollment is down from a number of years ago, so potential space. But we need to do an analysis, kind of a careful analysis. So I'd want to, we need a little more time. I just wanted to show a hypothetical number. That was, again, I mentioned 130, 140, students that are already coming to Newton that are our staff kids. We certainly want to have them be able to get in if they applied through school choice. If they're not, as I mentioned, we still want the kind of the secondary option of them coming through the usual means that we have in our contract now. But this was an opportunity, I think, for us to get some money for those students, and then certainly don't know what the draw is out there. I think that's the hard part, is I don't know, and I think it's very hard to know what other communities and what other families would like to come to Newton. I think it'd be very popular, though. Certainly, it's a great district, as we know.
well, that will be very interesting question. Probably would need a little bit more discussion in terms of our staff kids, right? I mean, you mentioned that if they did not apply for the school choice, they will still have chance to have their kids sent to our schools, but there will be this, on the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, there's language right now in the contract, and that's the process that they're going now. I think, we don't want to take that away from our staff. I think it's a benefit for our staff members to do that. So that would be something that we still want to have our staff be, to not be worried about it. The benefit that, as I mentioned, if they didn't, by school choice, they're able to stay through graduation regardless. In the current contract, you need to be employed for Newton Public Schools to have your student attend. So that's
Liam, one thing I'll add in terms of children of teachers
yeah.
And other staff, those students, as long as you're not charging any kind of, accepting any kind of tuition for those kids, right? Those kids count in your Chapter 70 foundation enrollment.
They do. That's right.
Yeah. So you would, to the extent Newton's receiving minimum aid or foundation aid through Chapter 70 aid, that those students would count toward that.
That's right.
Because they're basically counted as resident students in Newton, effectively. They're not residents, but we treat them like residents.
Yeah. So in that case, Rob, then they would not be counted technically in Chapter 70.
School choice students would not be counted in your Chapter 70 foundation enrollment. They're counted in the foundation enrollment of the districts that are fiscally responsible for them, which is which are the districts where they reside. So those districts count those students for state aid purposes, because they're ultimately the ones that are being charged the school choice cost, and plus any special ed costs above that.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. We all know that Newton is well known for its quality special education.
Yeah.
So I guess we would not be surprised some districts, some parents would love to have their kids attending Newton school system. So in that sense, you said for special needs students, there will be incremental financial cost from the sending district. They will send additional money. But if we send those school choice students to our district schools, it's clear cut. We pay tuition. The tuition will be paid by the sending district, right?
So that's a little bit what kind of Rob explained. There's a little bit of a process. He talked about kind of claiming that in June.
Yeah.
And that we will be getting reimbursed for that full cost if they're out of district.
But my question now is, if they stay in our in-district special education program,
Yep, okay.
we also understand even in-district program still will be more costly than regular education.
Yeah.
And because the student-to-teacher ratio will be much smaller. It's not like regular, 20 students a class, 5 students a class. So how do we figure out we need to charge a little bit more money, not $5,000, like regular students? So any thinking on that?
Yeah, that's
process, which is in the spring. You would fill out the special education increment form for any student who is receiving any kind of special education services. And so you would put on that form all of their services, and it would calculate the rates for those services. And then you would submit that to us, and then we would reimburse you at the end of the fiscal year for those students.
Yeah, so just to add, so every district is using the same cost basis for claiming special ed costs for all school choice students. And it's the same cost categorization that we use for the circuit breaker program. The key difference being that for school choice, there's no minimum threshold that you need to meet in order to be reimbursed. You're reimbursed from the first dollar that you spend up to, whatever the cost of that student's program is based on the cost categories as defined on the special ed increment form, cost categories and rates defined on the special ed increment form. So everybody's playing by the same rules in terms of how they're costing those services and how they're being reimbursed. I will say that the vast majority of students participating in school choice are receiving in-district services. I think we have 17,000 students statewide that participate in school choice. That includes students who go to virtual schools as well. I think there are probably less than 100 students statewide that are in out-of-district placements of that entire school choice population. So it doesn't happen often. Though that being said, it does happen.
Okay, I think this is probably a little bit more complicated. We all know, average speaking, that per pupil expenditure is about, could it be 15,000 to 2,000 statewide? Some districts has more higher, low. Now we have $5,000 per pupil, and for special needs students, average speaking probably would cost more than $20,000. Average speaking, based on the per pupil expenditure. Certainly, this calculation could be quite complicated. How do we figure out for this particular school choice student? We spend, I don't know, $10,000 more than other students, other school choice students. So do we get all of them?
Well, so again, we're already doing a lot of that kind of claiming on circuit breaker. As Rob was mentioning, we're only getting a certain amount above a threshold. So we have kind of a process in place to basically try to make sure we maximize or claim all those additional services that may be required. So I'm pretty confident that we would be able to track and kind of, get all the expenses that a student may be receiving as part of the IEP.
Yeah. Okay, I'm all set now.
Thank you, Ping. Any other questions? Mayor Fuller?
Thanks. If I could just follow up with Ping's questions, I think it'd be useful to have some representative types of students on IEPs and what the reimbursement rate is that DESE uses, so we can get a sense of what that is. If I may, I heard two different things. I heard from Rob and Cheryl, we get reimbursed in full for our out-of-district payments. But the writing here said something very differently, and I just want to check. It says may receive a reimbursement of some of the costs.
That's right.
Which is it?
Correct. So I have actually updated that. Rob had to go through and correct me on that. So I'm going to have a different updated PDF presentation for you. So it's the full cost is that we will be doing.
This might be for Rob and Cheryl. It says receiving districts are not required to provide school choice students with transportation. Do they? Do not?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen that. I haven't seen that. Cheryl, have you seen that? Districts providing transportation to students who are not on IEPs? Yeah. Yeah, no, we have not seen that. The only requirement for relative to transportation is that if a student who has an IEP, as part of that IEP, has transportation as a related service in their program.
Yep, I saw that.
Yeah, you are required to provide transportation to those students. And as I said, sometimes it can be more cost effective for the sending district to arrange that, though certainly we see receiving districts that arrange that and pay for that and then submit that as part of their special ed increment claim when they claim costs for that for those particular students.
You mentioned that 17,000 students are in school choice. Do you know what % are on IEPs?
Oh, that's a good question. Cheryl, do you have that? Do you know roughly? Yeah.
I don't. I wouldn't be able to answer that.
I'd be guessing. It's I want to say we can go back and confirm. I want to say it's at least a few thousand students statewide out of that 17,000. It's several thousand students. And again, those services range from a few $100s, a couple $1,000s, up to hundreds of thousands of dollars in a few instances of students who are in out of district placements.
If I could just expand Tamika's good question, she talked about availability of space for Metco students. It sounds like there'd be 3 competitors here: availability of space for Metco, availability of space for staff, students, and availability of space for school choice, so that as space becomes more limited, and once you have a child enrolled, for lots of reasons we want to keep them, it gets more and more complicated in how that works with the cycles of demographics. I also not sure I understand the finances, but there's also a trade-off as class sizes become bigger, both for students and for teachers. Smaller class sizes are often an advantage. So that, how we weigh that versus the financial. Last thought is, thank you for the dates, Liam. And I understand there'll be a public hearing, but it strikes me this is pretty complicated and has lots of implications. I would have thought that we would need another date to really talk about it, separate from the public hearing. I don't, but if you really want to vote in April, and April is smack in the middle of the budget discussion, so there's going to be a lot going on.
Chris, if I may.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point on the discussion. I mean, obviously there's a good amount of time between now and April, but there's a lot happening. And this impacts everything, right? This touches all the bases. So I think certainly, I think we have to see how this progresses maybe over the next couple meetings of discussion, couple months, and we'll make an appropriate determination on, timing on moving forward on really voting on it. Or
Chris? So to that point, one thing I want the committee to understand and the members of the public who might be observing is that the long-range planning committee that Emily, myself, and An Ping assist on, we had spoken at length about having some type of school choice training session for the school committee so that we can really get into the weeds in terms of numbers and some of the implications and the challenges and just vision for Newton what it might look like. And so I still think that would be a really good and strong thing for the committee to do. And so I would encourage us to move forward on that.
Thank you, Tamika. Anybody else with questions? Emily?
Just for the public who's listening, we have to make a vote on it by June 1st. That's what the end deadline is. So.
And Chris, I just quickly like to add that, Leanne, I really appreciate if you give us some real students' profile so we can chew on that, understand specifically if this special needs student, if attending the in-district programs or out-district programs, how much we possibly could spend and how much possibly we could get the reimbursement. And I assume it's not dollar for dollar, but we still want to understand this for implications of this. It's and of course with the staff, the kids, so it's a little bit more complicated than we just think school choice program. So I totally agree that we need to have some executive session probably to talk more specifically.
Open session.
Open session?
Yeah, open session, yes. Yeah. Thank you, Anping. Yeah, open session.
Okay, thanks.
Rajiv?
Just a comment. I feel like we've spiraled a little bit into a discussion of how expensive special ed students are and how much IEPs cost. Love it if we could take a step back from that, because this is not about avoiding special ed costs. If we were to go with school choice, there are many implications. The financial ones are probably the easiest to work through. Balancing enrollments is going to be challenging. I think there are also implications for the teacher's contract, which is at a delicate stage right now. So I have concerns and questions on a number of fronts. The timing may not be great this year, is kind of what I'll put out there in terms of my thinking on this. We have a lot of variables in play right now. So, thanks.
Thanks, Rajiv. Any other questions? Yes, Dr. Nolan?
Back, had a successful run at Finance Committee, so just want you to know. But second of all, I just want to remind the committee when we talked earlier in the summer, actually August, I gave you a bunch of different frames around which to think about long-range and facilities planning. A financial one, a human resources one, a heart one, a head one, a neighborhood schools one. And we are going to have a lot of conversations about available resources, and this is one way that additional resources can come into the district. And we already have students who are opting in here from other districts with no reimbursement for their time here. So hearing the problems that you brought to the table in the summer, I just brought this forward. You obviously are in control of all of it, but in terms of the claims about dropping enrollment and are we bringing in any revenue, this is an option, right? So it's one way to look at our enrollment issue and our needs issue. It's not the sum solution to anything.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Liam, thank you, Rob and Cheryl. This is something very different for us to even be engaging in this discussion. Look, I personally commend Dr. Nolan for bringing it forward, and whether it's something that works there for us or not, I think these are the fresh looks that we should be taking at some of these issues as we're trying to do everything we can to pull every thread to make this as sustainable an enterprise as we can. So thank you, appreciate the presentation and appreciate you both spending some time with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Rob and Cheryl.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you. All right, the next item on the agenda, well, I guess we should probably, would you like to go back to the superintendent report and give that, and then we'll move to the teaching and learning update?
So just briefly, I just was at the Finance Committee speaking to the finance group about Curriculum purchases that are included with $6.2 million of use, proposed use of free cash offered by the mayor. And just there were normal questions about what kinds of materials, in what order, how, why, those types of things. So just wanted to update everyone there. We may be back there on the 22nd talking again, and possibly on the 17th. I just want to mention that very shortly the class of 2024 will be marching across the stage with their diplomas. Lots of excitement in the air, lots of college acceptances. It's a pretty exciting time of year, and I just want to say no matter what path our students are on in their postgraduate work and life, we're really proud of the students who are emerging from our high schools, and we're really thrilled for all of the buzz that's happening in all the high schools. A couple things from my student advisory group, though. They're a little exhausted with everyone asking them, so what are you doing now? And ask instead, instead of what's next for you, how about just chatting with them about what's going on in their lives right now, and if it comes out that they're talking about college, that it's like a stress point for them right now. It's like a really tough time. You probably know, Amy, from your day job as a high school principal. It's pretty stressful time. Just a reminder about weather and school cancellations. We've had some weather this weekend. It's nice to have it happening. We have extensive procedures about how those decisions are made, and the mayor and I have these really fancy 4 a.m. parties to determine whether we can close school. I just want to make parents aware that some of our considerations have to do with students who eat their only meals with us in a given day, or if there are power outages, school is a warm place to be. So there's a lot of perspectives that go into school cancellations, but my job is to keep school open as much as I possibly can, and I just want to give a huge shout out to the DPW and all of the city departments. The sidewalks at every school this morning, the custodians, the driveways, the plows, and the parking lots looked really tremendous. So thank you to our city partners for all of their efforts.
Dr. Nolan, can I just jump in? For anybody who's watching, tomorrow night is going to be a bad night. We're getting probably up to 2.5 inches of rain in a very short period of time, and all the snow is going to melt. So it will still be going on Wednesday morning. We fully expect schools to be open, but everybody should give themselves extra time Wednesday morning. And if they have a basement that normally has problems, get those sump pumps going.
Just a reminder that budget season is kicking off. Our proposed calendar is included in the superintendent's update. Just some updates about professional learning happening in the elementary special education department with their related service providers on the neurodiversity movement led by folks at MGH Aspire. Also, consultancy has been put into place with the teaching and learning department, the student services department, and elementary ed. And this is instructional leadership through a partnership with the Center for Educational Leadership. This Instructional Leadership Academy allows our principals and staff led by the assistant superintendents to walk through classrooms, get in tune with how they're seeing instruction, give feedback, understand how the data and what that means to students' experience in instruction, and gives feedback to our teachers on certain tools to grow their practice. It's exciting. It's been a really nice collaboration between 3 parts of our school system, and we're looking forward to expanding that into our secondary world in subsequent years, if it makes sense to do so. Lots of progress reports coming to elementary families, so if you haven't seen those, please be sure to look for them. They're in Aspen, and you have to download them. They'll be coming on February 1st. The winter assessment windows for literacy are open. Kindergarten screenings are happening, and the letters for kindergarten screening results will be in Aspen January 12th. We also have access testing for our English language learner students ongoing currently for all grade levels. And I just included some descriptions of what access testing is so you can all understand it. And finally, just a shout out to all of our arts professional teachers in the district. There's been amazing shows and holiday concerts. They're still ongoing. There's a bunch this week, a bunch next week. It's a real showcase of skill and collaborative musical behavior, and we're just really proud of the results that the Music and Fine Arts Department are getting. So with that, it's the end of the update.
Thank you. Any questions for the superintendent or any comments? Emily?
Just a quick one. First, I'm thrilled that NGH Aspire is an amazing program, and that we had the professional development meeting with them. I think that's absolutely terrific and wonderful. And also, interested in hearing more as time goes on about the neurodiversity movement and aspects of that we're going to be integrating in the district. And I guess I'm hopeful that there continues to be those types of trainings for different types of disabilities as well, and not just the ones that are now traditionally labeled as more invisible as opposed to the visible ones, and that we continue to move forward on that.
Sure, and I should say the Student Services Disability Working Group has now got on its feet and has representatives from all walks of life and all different types of learners and needs. And Casey Miller will be showcasing the biographies of those individuals and sharing that with the community so people know who's advising us and what kind of trainings that we're having. So you're going to get what you ask.
It's great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Moving on, our next agenda item is teaching and learning update. So Dr. Renee McCall will be joining us for that.
Thank you, Stephen. So kind. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I have to straighten out these chairs. All right, I am here tonight with an update from the last time I was before you in the fall. I'm excited to announce that we have finalized 2 deliverables, one being our family-facing curriculum site, and the other one is our curriculum updates review timeline. Then I'm going to walk through just some updates about the elementary literacy program and just some content updates in general. All right. So if you click on this link, it's also included in the Teaching and Learning website, and it's also going to go out in the superintendent update. Families can click on the link, and it should take you directly to this page. It's our landing page giving an overview of our philosophy here. And then if you continue to scroll down, it'll take you to K-8 curriculum links. You can access the links this way, or you can use the sidebar over here. I'll just start with K. I'll only focus on one grade level. So for each of the grade levels, it'll take you to a landing page that looks like this, that has all of the content areas. And if I were to choose literacy, let's say, and again, each page will have an overview for the content, and it'll take you through how the year will look for your particular child. So this is K. This is broken down into 4 modules. It'll give you the big topics and ideas here. Also thinking about what deliverables students will be able to perform at the end of the module. And then it gives you a sense of what texts students will cover. And then, again, parents and families can continue to scroll down to see the learning targets. And then it'll take you to the next module. So again, literacy has 4 modules. And then you can click back here to go back to the home page, or you can continue down. These are all for K. If you're interested in looking at math, you can click here. Again, it has an overview specifically for the math program. We use Investigations 3 for K-5. And this, again, breaks it down by unit. It has learning targets, essential questions, and then again, overview of what students will be able to do by the end of the unit. So that's the sense of each of the content areas and how they will flow. Again, here's the overview for science, breaking it down into the various units. You get the idea. It also has social studies, social emotional learning, as well as the arts, PE and health and wellness, and library. And again, it's K-8. We are in the process of working on the high school curriculum page. Our goal is to have that done by June. and to be able to roll it out to the public by the end of the summer. So that is our family-facing page right now. And then the next thing that I wanted to show you is our curriculum review and pilot plan. This is really small. This right here is just a snapshot, but if you were to look at the next page, it's even smaller. However, if you zoom in, here, okay, maybe that's not going to, oh, here we are. So you have this PDF, and it is for 7 years, beginning with the 23-24 school year. And we're on a 7-year review timeline here for each of the content areas. As you can see, we have literacy K through 5 broken out by K through 2 on the first row, 3 through 5, and then literacy for middle school for 6, 7, and 8 here. Right now, this is the current year, 23-24. We are in the process of full implementation for K1 and 2. And then we are piloting in some schools for grades 3 through 5. But next year, we're doing a full implementation for EL education for grades 3 through 5. So if you just look down here for the school year 23-24, you can see where we are in terms of the various stages that are outlined down below. Stage 1 here is assess, research, and develop a plan. Stage 2 is continued development. Stage 3, we have pilot and professional development. Stage 4 is full implementation and professional development. And finally, stage 5 is evaluation and monitoring of curriculum rollout. And so if you, again, continue down the school year 23-24, you'll notice that with science, we are piloting and providing professional development for K through 2 units of study. And we're also doing that at the middle school level. But then when you look across, we'll be piloting in grades 3 through 5, beginning in year 25-26. So you get a sense of how this is going to flow. And then social studies here, we're in the process for K through 2 of assessing, researching, and developing a plan. So we're at stage 1 here, but we're continuing with PD for grades 3 through 5. We're piloting and providing professional development for the middle school levels. And then going down here with math, we implemented Investigations 3 in 2017. And so we are now in the process of reevaluating or reviewing our process. And then just continuing off on down the list, we have world languages. With Spanish, we're continuing development, and then we're assessing for French, Chinese, and Italian. In the school year 2010 and then through 2013, we performed a review in art, music, and drama. And so we are now in the process of reviewing those outcomes from that report. There were new curriculum frameworks for arts in 2019, and we are now in the process of developing a plan to review those with educators. In 2020, we didn't have the opportunity to do that because of the pandemic. And then there has been an impact on our coordinator's position where he had to teach some classes, and as a result, was unable to do professional development with educators. And so we are really looking forward to doing that this coming year. And then finally, for PE health and wellness, we are in the process of assessing, researching, and developing a plan with the new standards that just came out this year. And high school, we are going to be introducing this timeline to them to develop a formalized process with them. We are going to be starting with the alignment of K through 12 curriculum. We actually have a visioning meeting this Friday so that we can ensure that there is alignment vertically and horizontally with our curriculum for mathematics K through 12. And once we get through that process, we will expand that process with the other curriculum, with social studies, science, ELA, et cetera. This is an overview, sort of highlight of elementary literacy program by the numbers. Zoom out a little bit here. Just a second. All right, so I wanted to just give you some highlights of how we're doing with the literacy program. I wanted to remind everyone that 100% unanimously selected by our curriculum selection committee last spring, so we are excited to have that rolled out in K through 2 this fall. We have more than 120 hours of professional development that has been provided to school leaders, teachers, special educators, literacy specialists, and principals, as well as the central staff. We have 2,500 K through 2 students who are engaged in daily, rigorous, complex, and engaging literacy instruction that's provided by this particular curriculum that is high quality. We have 320 educators equipped with knowledge and skills to effectively teach literacy with, again, this high quality instructional material. We have 206 active users of online digital platform. It's called Kidem, and many of our teachers are actually using that to access teacher materials. We have 5 schools who are piloting grades 3 through 5. They're early adopters to the EL education this year. Again, with the full-scale rollout in the fall, we'll be training all of our 3 through 5 teachers this spring. And then finally, we have 4 schools who are receiving targeted intervention through support with Unbound Ed that I'll get into a little bit more deeply in a couple of slides. This is a picture actually from a first grade student. He created this feelings container, and it says, "Feed me your worries." I don't know if you can see that, but it is just a really great opportunity for students to demonstrate what they know. They were responding to a task where they had to create their own magnificent thing after reading that text, the most magnificent thing that they really enjoyed. And so I just thought I would include his work here. Additionally, a 4th grade student, as a result of asking about their experience with EL education, said, "My brain feels sweaty." So it really just talks to how well our students are working with the curriculum and really rising to the occasion here. Educators are doing a great job collaborating and planning, which is fantastic. Again, I think that the fact that we had lessons and units that were written more than 10 plus years ago, it's great to have HQIM, again, high quality instructional materials that all of our teachers are using. And students are having similar experiences. And they're experiencing or engaging in complex thinking and a culture of grappling with appropriate scaffolds. So we're intentional not to over scaffold for students, that productive struggle is really important. There's a high level of student engagement, investment, and pride in work products. And then habits of character are generalized across the day, which is really important. Again, students are working on collaborating with one another, really being cooperative. And then finally, I wanted to mention that Foundations is going strong, which is awesome. We are not using the skills block right now, which is an aspect of EL education. We are just focusing on the content modules and using Foundations and Hegarty to teach phonics and phonemic awareness. We are engaging with EL education to provide, on the left side here, to provide materials training. All of our teachers, again, central staff and principals have engaged in these two-day training. On day 1, here is what they're focused on, just really getting an overview of what EL education is about. And then in day 2, they're focusing on unboxing the materials, understanding how to conduct the lesson. On the right here, this is talking about our partnership with Unbound Ed, and we are receiving implementation support for schools, where we're focusing on lesson structure, instructional routines, content engagement, and adaptations. Down here, it's a bit small, but what we're measuring here, we've done 2 rounds of classroom observations at the 4 schools, and this is on a scale of 3. Structure. In the beginning, it was we rated 2.03, and then in December, we had a walkthrough, and we were at 2.17. So as you can see, it has increased in terms of implementation around these 4 particular areas that we are measuring. Instructional routines, as you can see, has also increased. Content engagement, again, how students are engaging with the materials. And then adaptations. We're making sure that teachers are implementing the lessons as they were designed and not making adaptations that would then lessen the rigor or change the objective of the lesson. So we're experiencing a lot of success there, and we're in the stages of figuring out how we might be able to replicate this implementation support across the other 11 elementary schools. And then finally, we just have some quick content area updates for fine arts. Again, there was a much longer list, but I just wanted to provide some highlights. We're focusing on professional development centered in neuroscience and the arts, as well as UDL. For social studies, we have an 8th grade MCAS that will be field testing at all middle schools this spring. We have a shift in world languages toward acquisition-driven instruction. And then in middle school ELA, we're focusing on, we receive funding for teacher collaboration time and materials to support the development of a lesson, because in grade 6, what we're hoping for is to have one novel that we are using across the schools. And so we are stipending teachers to create a lesson for that. And then we have continued professional development around key comprehension routines. So this is focusing on strengthening vocabulary and reading comprehension in our students based on iReady data. So we want to be sure that teachers have that particular knowledge to increase student outcomes in those areas. ST Math is active in all 15 elementary schools as a Tier 1 support. This is closely aligned with the Investigations 3 math curriculum. And then science, as I mentioned earlier, is field testing Open SciEd across K through 2, 19 teachers, 4 schools, and this is a 2-year field test. I also just wanted to mention one other update. Oh, I did mention earlier that the PE health and wellness curriculum standards were updated just this past year, and the last time those were updated was 1999, so we're really excited about getting started unpacking those particular standards. And then in social studies, we will be using a $12,000 grant to build a partnership with Facing History and Ourselves to provide PD and coaching to middle school teachers in ways to deal with anti-Semitism and hate speech. So we're really looking forward to working more closely with teachers around that. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
So some of the members submitted some questions, so I'm just going to make sure we got them all and give just a few other commentaries. I just want to say to families, this was one of the #1 requests across the system was, could you please tell me when my child is learning what they're learning? And so I just want to thank you, Renee, for this really hard work and for getting this out very quickly. But I also want to caution parents that if your child needs additional remediation or extension, we're going to dip backwards and forwards in the curriculum, because that's our job, is to make sure that while a child could demonstrate mastery of like a 3rd grade skill over here, they may need that remediation again in a subsequent year just to remind them of something or to make sure that it sticks. So I just want to be clear, nobody should be writing us like the minute someone talks about a 1st grade standard in a 3rd grade classroom. Like, I just want to be clear. That's the risk of putting out these pieces. This is meant as a guide. Obviously, teachers are going to stick to the curriculum, but they're also going to give kids what they need when they need it. So I just want to say that. Secondly, I just want to say thank you also, Renee, for the pilot plan. This allows us to vie for grants and to watch what the Department of Ed is doing. And I say that because if the Department of Ed comes out with some change, we're going to have to revise this cycle. And I just want the committee to know it's not because we're changing the game, it's because the game changes around us sometimes. Also, new grant opportunities come out. MCAS may have changes. For example, there's new science assessments that the district was chosen by the Department of Ed to pilot these new assessments. I tried to protest, but they wouldn't let that be the case. We have to learn from what those are. That may have further implications on how we address the curriculum cycle review. So I just want to make sure people know that there may be some changes, but we'll come back to you and we'll share with you what those changes could be. I think we covered the questions about 9 to 12 curriculum review that will be up and coming. We're going to start with math, and then we're going to take it from there with the other curriculum areas. we've been starting to have conversations with all of the high school department heads about how they're going to approach this same this same type of document. And then the question about are there significant possible budgetary implications to this? The answer is yes, there are for any curriculum review. We want to be able to say to teachers, what are the problems that we've identified through this review? What are the potential efficiencies we could find? And also, what are the latest and greatest base materials, tools, digital tools, intervention pieces, materials, books? So we do need to ask those questions as we go through this. As I just said, I was at Finance Committee asking to be able to use some of the free cash funding for curriculum so that we could move ahead in this. Just by way of comparison for the committee, in my former school system, 5,300 students, the teaching and learning budget was $1 million. Here, and we had 500 teachers. Here, we have 2,000 employees, and we have 12,000 students, and it's the same budget. It's $1 million. So if we're going to really do this well, we are going to need to invest in some high-quality materials. And happy to say that in this month alone, with Renee's collaboration and Aisha's collaboration and the grants office collaboration, we did obtain a $1 million grant for additional high-quality literacy materials with no required match from the City of Newton. So, so we are going to do our part to continue to expand funding for this reason as well. Just want to make sure I got everybody's questions around review. I think so. Oh, there was a question about how frequently would the arts curriculum be updated, but I think you gave a good overview of why we did not get that done when that happened. But there is a comprehensive report written by the same fine and performing arts people that are still on staff.
Okay, great. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Anna. Is there any questions?
No surprise.
Go ahead, Amy.
I have a question about the rollout of social studies versus literacy. So if I look at sort of the literacy rollout, you really started from the youngest learners and you're working your way up. In social studies, it looks like it's the reverse.
Well, with social studies, we are doing it unit by unit and not doing a full-scale rollout like literacy. And so we piloted units in grades 3 and 5. So we're taking them sort of one grade at a time. And we're also doing some updates in middle school as well. So it's not a seamless rollout similar to literacy where we're taking on high-quality instructional material that's a curriculum that we're using across all grade levels. But again, we're looking at what we have currently and figuring out what needs or gaps that we have and taking it one unit at a time.
Makes sense. Renee, there was one other question. It was about acquisition-driven instruction for world languages.
Oh,
Could
yes.
you explain what that
Yes.
is to people?
So acquisition-driven instruction is really focused on a method of acquiring a second language. So moving away from a focus on learning a long list of vocabulary or spending a lot of time on grammar, we're really talking about comprehensible input where teachers are speaking in the target language in a manner in which students can understand and comprehend what they're saying. Where students are reading a text or listening to a video, unpacking song lyrics. Again, so it's comprehensible input, acquiring the language by using the language versus, again, just studying vocabulary and then learning those things outside of the context of the language.
And there was one last question about social justice curriculum resources, particularly at the elementary level. And since EL has a new curriculum that has a character education backbone to it, we are currently taking the CARES lessons, social emotional learning, which are on the current website for parents to look at, and our social justice toolkit, and looking at the new curriculum and deciding which things, when, and where. We don't want a lot of duplication. We'd like it to be as aligned with the EL curriculum as possible. So that part is in process because we haven't even opened the 3 to 5 kits yet. So you'll see that as those pieces unfold.
Yes, that is a work in progress, but if families were to take a look at the family website, on some grades we actually have gone through the process of unpacking the EL materials and then outlining those particular habits of character that students are focused on. So alignment of the CARES framework to what's happening in EL. And so again, we're taking it one grade level at a time.
Can I also just say the website is awesome?
Thank you.
It's
It
awesome.
It was a joint effort. I can't take full responsibility. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same thing. I don't have a question, I just want to say the website's awesome.
I don't know how you're going to do it at the secondary level, like Godspeed. But in terms of just transparency, I want to know what's happening in my child's classroom, and there's a really, really accessible, clear way to find that information. So well done.
Thank you. It was a group effort again, and what we were hoping to do was to create information where where families could easily access it and understand it. What we had before, it was certainly detailed information, but it was hard to navigate. And so having it in one place on this website has been really helpful for everyone. Thank you.
Other questions? Tamika, then on Ping.
Thanks, Chris. So just more along those lines, just a lot of deep appreciation to you and everyone you collaborated with to put together the family curriculum website, and not only to put it together, but to put out a timeline that goes along with it as to how this district is reviewing and putting itself on a cycle of review and evaluation for our K-8 curriculum. And then one more piece, which is spoken as a very visual learner, the demo tonight of walking us through and scrolling through the page. I think that was fantastic. Not just sharing out the link, but walking us through and letting us see it in practice. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamika. On Ping.
Thanks. I'm so glad that now we have put the teaching and learning in the center of what we do. I like the very first sentence. That I think that's very critical. In past few years, I'm afraid that sometimes we were distracted, a lot of other things, and forgot that's the really the key component of education process is teaching and learning. And there were a lot of discussions, and we did not have a chance to address some parents' concern. But I think with these updates, now we are ready to work with parents, with district stakeholders, to talk about those issues. Now we have the substance to talk about. So I really appreciate that, and that's wonderful. Thanks for central leadership to put this, really highlight this. And in terms of the this K-8 curriculum review timeline, I try to review myself on my computers. Seems a little hard for me to expand. So probably we could redesign a little bit how to, if you look at this page, seems we have space here. We can kind of, enlarge those fonts. Otherwise, I have to adjust my, glasses 3 times to read. But of course, there might be some other way to expand on my screen, computer screen, but still, I think some other people will have a little bit hard time. Because this is so critical, we want to read carefully to see the timeline here. So, but I agree with Tamika that it's very important for you to go through, and I'm sure we will take time to review, and committee folks will review carefully, and then they might have the input to share with us. Lastly, it's a quick question. I apologize if my knowledge is a little bit limited. So in terms of professional learning and implementation support, here the unbounded implementation support. Could you say a few words about this unbound ed?
Sure. So last year, I, along with 4 other colleagues around this district, had the opportunity to attend the Standards Institute that was run by Unbound Ed, and they have a commitment to ensuring high quality instruction that is culturally responsive to all students. And when I was there, we learned quite a bit about how we're able to focus on GLEAM, which stands for grade level, engaging, affirming, and meaningful learning experiences for our students. It was a phenomenal few days there. But during that time, we learned a little bit about their implementation support. And because we had such a great experience at this conference, I engaged in conversation with them about perhaps coming in to do some work with 4 of our schools. And that started in the summer, where we were doing some visioning work with our central staff, and then selected 4 schools to do this more nuanced, intentional support around implementation. we really wanted to be sure, again, that teachers had the tools that they needed, along with professional development, to understand how to effectively implement the curriculum. And they have this framework that is focused on those 4 areas, as I outlined in the work here: content, engagement, adaptations, lesson structure, and instructional routines. So we wanted to be sure, again, that we're engaging in conversation using this framework so that principals as well as their teachers are able to, again, effectively implement the curriculum as it was written. And so what we're hoping to do, again, is to figure out a way that we can expand this support across the 11 schools to ensure that, again, teachers and school leaders are engaging in conversation about what's working and what's not working, so that we can make those shifts, again, so we can see more positive student outcomes in terms of literacy.
Very quickly, these numbers, underneath these numbers, could you just explain a little bit more? I understand the numbers looks that there is progress clearly, but in what sense? Could you say?
So again, it's on a rubric from 0 to 3, 3 being the highest. And so we would like to see 3s across the board. So by the end of the year, we have, again, 3 walkthroughs. These are from our first 2. And as you can see, we were around 2, and then it increased to getting closer to 2.5. And again, so hoping by the end of the year, we'll be at a full implementation at the most effective or highest level. So it's just showing our growth over time.
Yeah, probably I would, if we have time, I'd like to ask, how do you get those data? But I think, I don't want to prolong this discussion, and I will do some homework myself, and then I'll probably check with you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peng.
So just the quick explanation is, there's teams of us that go in, observe classrooms, and use a rubric and rate the implementation based on a scale of 1 to 3. So it also tunes the team to looking at instruction together, and are we all seeing the same thing? Are we all seeing instructional routines? If so, what are they? So that it's not left to chance whether good implementation is happening at all the schools.
So it's more kind of observational
Correct.
data. Okay.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Any other questions? I have maybe 2 just what I think will hopefully be very quick ones. First is should the expectation be that, is this going to naturally evolve, you think, to be like, is it going to become more granular over time? I mean, what we have out there now is, human nature going to say that, people are going to ask for more information. I want to see the worksheets. I want to see that, I guess, how do you think about how that would evolve and our response? And then number 2, are we expecting, kind of an onslaught of questions from families? And are we prepared for that?
Those are great questions, Chris. We encourage families to ask us questions for sure. What we were hoping to do, again, is to be transparent, as Dr. Nolan outlined earlier. And I do think that families want to know exactly what their students should be learning and what will be coming ahead in subsequent years. And so we wanted to have that information readily available to them. And so the idea is that we will update this on a routine basis. So as standards change, as instructional targets change, we will update this. But again, we wanted to be sure that families have what they need in order to, again, best understand what their students are learning. And our team is prepared to respond to questions. I know that families will likely reach out to teachers and principals, but they can always direct those questions back to teaching and learning, and we'd be happy to respond to those.
And I just want to say that it is not a realistic expectation for every daily lesson plan to be posted on a website, and nor do you want that, because teachers do have to have latitude. If we know where we're heading and there's accountability through walkthroughs and administrators are looking for implementation, there will be some variance between how things are deployed. But these materials ensure that teachers all have strong base materials, they have lesson plan scripts, they have modifications, there's leveling and universal design specifications already baked into the curriculum, and leveled text kits. So teachers do have some latitude. We want them to curate materials and experiences. They're professional educators. That joy of matching the curriculum to the little person in front of us who has specific personalized needs, we expect them to do that. You can't put that on a website. But you generally have the scope and sequence of what students are studying.
Okay, thank you. And if nothing else, okay, thank you. This is you know, I'm excited about this. This is I think, a big step forward in transparency, which, you know, a word often spoken around the table here. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Last item on the agenda is the memo for discussion of the calendar policy and homework policy. And I believe this is,
This is me.
okay.
So before you this evening are a few things. First, a summary of the work of the calendar working group that you all enjoyed last year under Kathy Smith. And thank you all for putting the decision-making recommendations in my lap after that. So I've made a recommendation here about how to operationalize what we learned from that plan. So there's a data analysis here so that anybody who's new to our conversation, or just to refresh the folks here, it's all in the memo why the recommendations that I am giving you tonight are here. The recommendations that I am giving you are, and they're not for decision tonight, this is our first look at these pieces, is one, to add Lunar New Year to the holiday calendar. Based on the survey data and our community needs and demographics, that is very clear to me from the data as a holiday that needs to be added, as it is celebrated in a manner parallel with other holidays that are already on our calendar. So that is the first piece. I also know that the district itself is an increasingly diverse one, and has made a commitment to signal welcoming and belonging to families of all cultural and religious backgrounds. And to this end, we will also should recommend that Diwali and Eid al-Fitr be included as a list of major holidays that are known and discussed within the Newton Public Schools. And there's data about that too. So there are two possible proposed calendar drafts for your consideration here tonight. Both of them have Lunar New Year on them. Both of them recognize Eid and Diwali, and a list of other major observed holidays. The first calendar that I have put out there is the one that I endorse, and that is that allows us to observe all the required holidays, has the same number of professional development half-days that are already existing in our current contract, and also adds one additional professional development day, a full day, to be executed on Election Day in 2024, so that would be November 5th. I would propose, however, that we have this full day of professional learning in perpetuity. Certainly, I have some concerns about having school open and our schools as voting places or elections, so I think it's a good year to try this out on that day. But I would propose a full day of professional learning for our staff every year. It has come up in the entry planning process as a desire of the staff, and we would arrange that day of professional learning with an educator-based team who would help us to develop the programming for that day. Teachers would have voice and choice within that. And that would allow teachers to vote in the morning and then arrive at a slightly later start time than some of them have now. It would allow families to take their children to voting, modeling that behavior. And so I would recommend that we operationalize that. What that does do, however, is cashes in 2 student days that are built into your current teacher contract for that day. So in your current teacher contract, teachers in Newton are paid for 185 days of school, and they only work 183 of those live and in person. Now, as a longtime teacher, we know teachers do things after, the beginning of school, or before the beginning of school and after, but they don't have to. And so I would say, the committee has made it clear that we would like to exercise all of the rights that we have under the contract. That would mean having 185 days of school for staff to work. I'm proposing trading those 2 days for this full day of professional learning. It does add one day to the length of the school year. It does not change time on learning for students. And it actually takes the specter of those 2 days that are unworked off the calendar altogether, and we get a full day of learning. This saves the district a lot of time, energy, and money. We could get a full day, 6 hours of training for teachers without spending money on substitutes or travel or any of those pieces. In other districts, I did a poll of Tri-County. Almost without exception in Tri-County, that day is a full day of professional development in Metro West. So we are unusual in not having a full day of learning, and also in that time period, for the same reasons I'm concerned about it. The second calendar that is there is a calendar without that day. It adds Lunar New Year, and it also makes 2 student days out of those 2 days that have been unworked by Newton teachers in previous contracts. So there's a lot of iterations of calendar that can come out of those 2 options. Those are the 2 I'm putting forward to you. It's either this one or that one. We do have to negotiate with our union if we are going to do the election day trade scenario. So I did run that by Mr. Zillis, and obviously with our current working conditions, he's focused on settling that. But I'll continue to have those conversations, and if you decide that that is a calendar that you would like to prioritize, then we will push those discussions more in depth. Of course, all of this goes together with additional recommendations from me about policies that need to go in effect, as well as the holiday calendar that is being enacted here. There's been wide feedback from parents and students about wanting to celebrate their holidays of all different cultures and religions without worrying about homework and missing out on certain activities within the school. So I have made 2 policy recommendations, one on the observances of religious holiday and one about how homework will be handled on those days. And so the decisions before you are yes or no, Lunar New Year, calendar 1 or calendar 2, and yes or no on the holiday and homework policies. Of course, within those yes or no, you can make friendly amendments, except with the Lunar New Year thing. It's either yes or no on that one. So those are the decisions that lay before you between now and our next meeting.
Okay. Questions? Comments?
I have some questions that came from the committee, if
Okay.
you want me to go through those.
Please.
Okay. Okay. So there was a question about absences and what absences are currently included as absent excused within our policy. And our policy states that students may be excused from school attendance for illness or quarantine, bereavement of serious illness in the family, whether so inclement as to endanger the health of the student, and observance of major religious or cultural holidays. A student may also be excused for other exceptional reasons with approval of the principal or designee. Then there was a question about when a holiday is not identified as a major religious one on any of our lists. There's still, protections still exist for students who observe them. How will we make sure that students and families know about this and the supports that they may have? And so the list included on the calendar is a guide, but obviously if this policy is adopted, it'll be put into handbooks with the operational procedures for how parents can handle the need for particular religious leniency, so to speak, within homework and holiday and attendance policies. There was a question about whether our teacher contracts provide for religious observances for absences, and the answer is yes. There are 6 quote-unquote other days in our collective bargaining agreements, and therefore observances or / other days, and in some cases the use of personal days have also been used for religious situations. And those were the questions submitted about religion and holidays.
Okay. Any others?
I have a question.
Okay. Amy and then Emily?
Emily, you should go first. For draft 2.
Yep.
Half-day PD, 20th, 23rd. Is there school on either of those days for students?
Which day?
June 20th, 23rd.
They are actually not half-day PD days. They're half-days for students. That's how it's written in your current contract.
I meant under this proposal, are students still going to school on the 20th and the 23rd?
Under section 1 or 2?
2.
Under 2, students go to school on the 23rd and 24th, yes, and the 20th.
Was there?
It's an odd way that it's written in the contract right now. So the last day of school is a half day, and 2 additional half days of student, or could be full days, can also be run those days.
Okay. I have one more question. In our current early dismissal schedule, we have the traditional Wednesdays, and then we also have other days that are early dismissals. They follow a totally different schedule. Some of those are because of conferences, and I understand can't be moved. Some of them are PD workshops where teachers are only interfacing and educators are only interfacing with one another. Is there any possibility that with the addition of a full day PD day in November, we might consider removing some of those half-day dismissals to extend the school day and minimize disruptions for students and for their families?
So as a mother, I would like to tell you yes, but as your school superintendent, I will tell you that we do not have enough time to do what we need to do, particularly right now at the elementary level. This is the only show in town for their coordinated planning time. So I would be loath to remove that. But it would be nice to undertake that conversation with our union partners in full and talk about, you know, who do we want to be in the future in terms of how we roll with professional development.
Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Emily?
2 quick things. First, I greatly appreciate the actual recommendations that came back concrete. I thought that was great. Thank you very much. I actually am also quite happy about the concept of students not being in the building on election day. That has been a long-standing push-pull. We don't have other locations in the city. We don't have many of them that are accessible, and even our schools aren't that accessible. That we've had no choice but to continue to have elections be held in schools while the students are still in the building. I would welcome any opportunity for us to not do that anymore for multiple reasons, safety being a big one. So I appreciate that, and I'm all for Lunar New Year, just as an aside. But my question is, having had kids in the high schools, Toby, when the whole concept of homework and what homework means and how much homework is actually the correct amount of homework, and with depending on the teachers, mixed signals and mixed policies, even though there was an official policy. And I think that one of the most difficult parts of this is going to be for the high school principals and getting consistency across all teachers at all schools. So that's just, I think, a very important thing that needs to be raised because we deal with it now. So, Reed. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Anyone else? Tamika?
I don't know if this was raised. I was a little distracted earlier. My apologies. But I just want to say how I think it was wonderful that you included the recommendation to have the calendar working group meet for periodic reviews and evaluations of the demographic needs of our student population, student and families. I think that was a wonderful piece to add, and I think your instincts are right on the money in terms of your recommendation, and I thank you for making a recommendation.
Thank you, Tamika. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you for the presentation. I'm in full agreement with your recommendations as they were, I think, reflective of kind of what the calendar working group came up with, although didn't provide a formal recommendation. And you know, I think you hit all the points. So appreciate that. That is our last agenda item. Yes.
When is the latest date that we can determine the calendar for next year? What, as we've got 2 different drafts, a preference for one, but important work to do with the NTA.
Right. I mean, it's just, this is the time of year you have voted it traditionally, so the longer we wait, the less knowledge families have of how to handle their summer, their vacations, all of those pieces.
So ideally, we're voting in a couple weeks from now, or wait, what's the recommendation on timing of a vote?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can likely vote this at the next meeting. I don't know if anyone has any real differing thoughts there.
I mean, we have labor management tomorrow with the NTA. It will come up again. So, we can keep talking about how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should have that as, in mind, and, obviously, I'm sure Anna will keep us all updated if there's any changes, and, further chance to discuss and vote next meeting. Okay, thank you.
Additionally, and Jill's back there, so she could speak more in greater detail to this, but if the school committee makes a change to something within our purview, we could always work through our contract negotiations, but also implement the change and bargain the impact.
Thanks, Tamika. Okay, so Jill, just logistically speaking, as we will be entering into executive session, we can move forward with that. Do we need an official adjournment, or? So officially end the public meeting and then vote to go to executive session?
Or just make the motion and say we're not returning to open session?
Okay. All right. All right, so with that, is there a motion to enter into executive session for purpose number 3 prescribed by MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Tamika, seconded. We'll go into a roll call vote, and we will not be reconvening in a public session after. Ward 1, absent. Ward 2, yes. Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6, absent. Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 8?
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
Okay. That motion passes, and we will move to executive session. Thank you.
So we are not posted for that, which I think is something we should fix next time.
Yes.